Now, the nomination of impeached former Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe to the Judicial Service Commission has been met with mixed reaction. Hlophe was found guilty of gross misconduct back in 2008 in a matter involving former President Jacob Zuma, and after the 2024 general elections, Hlophe was sworn in as a parliamentary leader of the MK party and nominated to serve in the JSC. Now, the Legal Resource Centre has made a pronouncement that they would be challenging this decision. For more analysis, I am joined by attorney Abigail Ngobeni. A pleasure to have you on the program, Abigail. Let's begin by looking at the background on Hlophe's case. I did make a very short summary, but can you summarize the key events leading to Judge Hlophe's previous removal from the bench and how those events have shaped public perception today?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, you'll remember that there was an issue where the Judicial Service Commission, through its tribunal, had an inquiry looking into the conduct of Judge Hlophe, and then they came up with a decision to the extent that they found him guilty of what they term, or what is termed, a gross misconduct, which then from there its report was confirmed by the Judicial Service Commission, which later went to Parliament, and of course it led to his impeachment and removal as a judge.
What is the primary function of the Judicial Service Commission, and why is it crucial for the integrity of the South African judiciary?
The Judicial Service Commission is a very important body tasked with very esteemed duties, particularly when you talk of appointment of judges into the bench. And of course, the Judicial Service Commission also looks at the issues of discipline and ethics of the judges. And that should tell you that it's a body that plays an integral part of the judicial system as a whole, because that is the body that keeps the judges accountable. And if anybody is to serve in those structures, of course, expectation is there that such persons should be having high moral values, ethical obligations that they are always subscribed to, and of course, upholding the rule of law and respecting that particular office.
I want to extend a bit of your remarks initially. How does the nomination of such a controversial figure like Hlophe to the JSC indeed affect public confidence in the judiciary and the legal system as a whole in this country?
Well, that is a very important question, but my response to it will not necessarily be directed to the person in the form of former Judge Hlophe. Sure. But I will just focus on what I think as a person that there should be. I think there's a vacuum in terms of establishing guidelines. You'd remember that the Constitution is also not giving us a particular clarity on as to the caliber, the credentials, and the qualifications and the requirements of people that should serve in that particular commission. And of course, this nomination that we have before us, it's a very dynamic one. But if I were to direct my response to you particularly, I would say where we are, it's as a result of a parliamentary door, which have seen him coming as a parliamentary, not as a judge, because he's not there as a judge. He's now there as a parliamentarian, and he has an oath of office of parliament. But as to whether, given that he was found guilty of something that is deemed to be very serious, whether he is saving there, is it giving the community and that kind of a confidence? One may not necessarily be direct, but I believe that there is a vacuum in terms of the credentials of people that are supposed to be in that commission.
And let's extend that. I mean, what legal precedents exist regarding the appointment of individuals with previous misconduct findings to bodies just like the JSC?
You see, the judiciary itself, and maybe I should say the law fraternity, requires that any person that serves in any capacity should be a fit and a proper person, which then means that they should uphold a certain level of integrity. And we that will then goes to the extent of saying, if I am a student, I will then expect that my examiner would have passed the exam that I am being subjected to. And then that says, if I want to ascend to the bench, but I'm being tested by a person who seems to have not been able to uphold that which I'm being tested on, that is a call for concern. But my stand as well is, I'm alive to the supremacy of the Constitution. The Constitution is the only law that we should align ourselves to. Any conduct or any law that is contrary to the Constitution will be deemed to be invalid. And as it stands, the Constitution does allow him to serve there. But another aspect to it, Nhlanhla, would be, I think the JSC as in itself has a prerogative in terms of the Constitution to establish procedures that guide itself. And I think it's the JSC as well that should live up to the level where they come up with certain guidelines and principles to say any person that should serve as a commissioner, these are the highest level of standards and requirements they need to qualify for.
Abigail, I do acknowledge that you are not speaking to us as a political analyst, but allow me to be a bit mischievous. How does the division among political parties regarding Hlophe's nomination also reflect the broader challenges facing the government of national unity?
Well, you are really taking me to the political space, which I was not expecting. But of course, you'd remember that it talks to the maturity of our democracy. It talks to the elevation of the voice of the people who voted to have such a structure of parliament, the nature of parliament, the nature of government we have. And of course, this is one of the challenges the first of the challenges that we are having today, where we saw the parliament highly divided, particularly when we talk of this particular issue, where others had a view to say he shouldn't go, but others had a view that he should go. But of course, that is the beauty and the challenges that comes with democracy. And one can only take that argument up to that far, because I'm also not a political person.
No, thanks for that. But what are the implications, especially for future judges? How might Hlophe's presence on the JSC indeed influence future judicial appointments, but also the selection process for aspiring judges?
You'd remember that as he'll be there, he'll not be working alone.
Yeah.
I think the Chief Justice is the chairperson of that particular commission. There's also a wing of legal people that are serving in that commission. How Judge Hlophe is coming as a member of parliament, representing doing public representation there, coming through the door of parliament. But of course, cases will be dealt on a case-and-case basis on whether or not his presence there will then, he would be able to be objective in delivering his duties. But of course, I would have expected as a legal person who's one day aspiring to be in the seat of a judge or in the bench, to be tested by a person who has been found to be able to respect the oath of office that they take. So it's just based purely on my observation and my expectations. But you'd remember that the law does favor his presence into that commission.
But several NGOs have expressed strong objections to Hlophe's nomination. What are the main concerns, or at least those that you've noted, and how might these affect the political discourse surrounding this issue?
Well, I've noted the sentiments shared by other NGOs to say they will be purely challenging this based on the rule of law, to say he can't be a member in the commission or serving in the body that have found him guilty and which led to his impeachment. But it bounces back to my initial comment to say the JSC as well as a constitutionally established body, it has the powers to come up with procedures and guidelines that directs its functioning. It will only be the issue of testing that against the law, and it will be very interesting to see how judges are going to apply their mind while hearing such applications, given that the Constitution and the law itself is not explicit to say he is disqualified.
Right.
I think more of their concerns, it's more ethics and morals more than the law.
And speaking about that, are there broader issues in the judiciary here? And what does this situation reveal about the current state of the South African judiciary and also the challenges that it faces?
Well, the issue of Judge Hlophe, I should be honest with you, should be treated in isolation.
Okay.
Because remember that the judicial authority rests on the courts, and our courts are, in terms of the Constitution, operating independently and impartially. And any other judge that is presiding in any matter is expected to uphold a certain level of integrity in exercising the court's mind and applying the law into the facts. So I don't necessarily think that the issue of Judge Hlophe should then give us a room to perhaps approach the judiciary with one blanket.
Yes.
I think this should be treated in isolation.
And how important is a public discourse in really shaping the policies and decisions which are related to the judicial appointments, especially in controversial cases?
I'm not so sure if I do understand that particular question, but well, the public perception and the public dissatisfaction about certain things. You remember that we all have different views, we all have different perceptions to things, but as and when there is an issue that have not been handled in line with the law, there are always legal remedies to sort out that particular challenge. And I think if as and when this matter develop and he finally serve in the commission and there are other dissatisfaction on how he conducts himself or deliver his duties and responsibilities as a commissioner in the commission, such kind of activities will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
As we wrap up, I want to explore possible reforms if necessary. I mean, what reforms, if any, do you believe are necessary to the JSC, or rather for the JSC, for greater transparency and accountability, especially in the judicial appointment processes as well?
So far, I should commend the JSC on how it has been handling issues of appointment. And of course, we have seen over the years the issue of balance in appointment. We have seen a lot of women ascending the bench, and that gives us confidence in that there is a development and there is the issue of gender parity. There is an issue of moving forward on other issues. But of course, I think when the drafters of the legislations were drafting it, we're not alive to this kind of developments that we have today, where you have an impeached judge coming back to serve in these bodies. And I think it's time that we go back to the drawing board to say, at the time when the legislations were drafted, were they alive to this kind of developments? Are we still having a constitution that caters for the recent developments? And are we still having legislations that are able to stand the test of time? And if not, it may be an opportune time for us to also revisit the laws that are governing such important bodies.
Thank you so much, Abigail Ngobeni, for your valuable insights on this complex and also a bit of a controversial issue as well. We do appreciate her patience as well.